Promoting safety in sex work.
Gender violence, a man's perspective.
Your views on corporal punishment.
From across the Caribbean.
This is Live Up, the show.
Hi there, good to see you again. We were talking about community on our last show, and it got me thinking about how many different kinds of community there are, right? You could be part of your neighborhood, your family, your friends, your church. And once you're part of some community, you have support. You're not alone in this world.
Well, exactly. You know, the old folks are always telling me about how the villages used to be real communities and how food that grew abundantly was shared. And of course, we all know the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. People seem to have a lot more time for each other back then.
Well, it's definitely something we do well to remember in these tough economic times. It doesn't cost you anything to offer someone a helping hand or some emotional support.
Well, that includes being aware of domestic violence. The number of recent deaths reported in Caribbean media shows us that we can't just keep minding our own business. Now, that's not to say that we go putting ourselves in danger, but sometimes a simple phone call can break up an argument. You know, is everything okay? And if not, call the authorities.
Although the majority of domestic violence victims are women, it is also a problem that affects men in our society. This report from Mitzi Allen in Antigua looks at gender violence from the point of view of the man as the victim.
When many people think about gender-based violence, they think about violence against women.
I must say for many years I thought it was really just about females, males, violence against females. But of most recent time, I actually get to learn that it's either against male or female. Pretty much gender speaks of both sex. And so it could be either against a female or male.
Pastor Clifton Joseph was among a group of men who participated in a workshop held in partnership with PAHO and the Directorate of Gender Affairs in Antigua and Barbuda. They reached out to men in the community to be a part of a campaign to end violence against not only women, but men as well. The workshops, which were conducted by Trinidadian Bishop David Aline of the Flaming Word Ministry, targeted men in the police force, prisons, the defense force, as well as non-governmental organizations.
We have a lot of traditional belief that violence and domestic violence can be caused. And what I shared and what I firmly believe is that violence is a response, and more so a reaction. And we can decide how we respond. We don't need to respond violently anymore. There can be different approaches.
Craig Rickard, the research officer in the Directorate of Gender Affairs, says gender-based violence is frequently invisible because it's behind closed doors, and often there is shame associated with this type of abuse.
The way in which we socialize our children really has an impact on how they grow up to be in society. When a child does something wrong, without saying to the child what they did, all you did was to beat them. And that child grows up with that mentality that once somebody does something wrong, what they're supposed to get is a good beating. And so, again, we need to shift the way we message the messages that we're sending. Also, the whole fact in terms of reporting and accessing assistance, that the men felt because of how our society is, because of our social norms, it is very difficult for a man to walk in, let us say, the police station and report that he's been abused by his wife, his girlfriend, or even another male. Much more so to seek help from social agencies, especially if he is seen as a very masculine person.
When people go to report it, these security services or these policing unit, they also perpetuate it. So there's a high incidence rate of actual policing being part of that whole domestic violence situation, of that violence. When people go to report it, they perpetuate it, they participate, they victimize the victims. And so we need to really educate them and speak to them and say, hey, let's stop this, let's finish this. And we could only do so by observing human rights conventions and observing the rights of others.
Pastor Joseph has identified ways in which his role within the community can help to eliminate the issues that lead to gender-based violence.
Within the church, we take time out to educate our congregation and friends of the church on the aspect of respecting oneself, both from scripture as well as everyday living. And at the Hope Institute, the community center, we take the time out to educate the boys and girls, which we see in large numbers. You don't really get much of the adults, but we take time out to impart to them the knowledge and to respect themselves. Because even from among our school children, you will find that they are negatives against each other, calling each other names and derogative meanings they use against each other. And you try to let them realize that every individual is important. And the truth is, we ought not to be pulling down anyone by using these terms.
The Directorate of Gender Affairs is hoping that their work in educating men, training the frontline workers, and having a confidential referral service will go a long way in changing cultural norms. This, they believe, will lead to more men being involved in the campaign to end gender-based violence. Reporting from Antigua and Barbuda, I'm Mitzi Allen for Live Up the Show.
So as we saw in that last report, some people believe that beating a child creates a response of violence in that child when he or she becomes older. You know, you do something wrong, you get hit. So that's what the child learns. So we asked you what you thought.
Honestly, I came up with my mom beating me, and that punishment is your mindset now after. Well, if you're a child that you get lashes, you listen to your mother or your father, you won't respond to it. You know, well, that's just their way of teaching you. Then some children, being that they're in the community and their mindset now is this violent mindset, so as someone hits them, they get and want to react, and you know. But sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. And being a corporal punishment, I find that some parents go a little too far with it, and that then would actually lead to a child wanting to go in that violent state.
I was punished when I was young, and I've never been to prison. I have never had any problems with the law. I don't have any problems at work. So sometimes I would say yes and no. But in my case, I have been a model child. I was never really any problems for my mother or father. But here or late, these school kids, I don't know what's going on with them. They behave so badly. And since they don't punish them in school, I think that has gone so far west instead of east, that these kids behaving worst.
I believe in corporal punishment, yeah, but I don't believe that it works, is 100% effective. I believe there are other ways that you can discipline a child other than the beating or whatever.
It depends on how it's done. Like, if it's done violently, then it will lead to violent people.
I find that when you deal with children, you gotta connect to children on a more psychological level, right? And try to understand where the child coming from. And try to if you punish the child, you can punish the child. You ain't gotta hit the child, but you can stop them from doing certain things. But you stop them from playing video games or going on the computer, that sort of stuff. So when you do that sort of stuff, it's more hurt the child, right? The child will more feel it, not really hurt, but the child will more feel it than to lash the child itself.
It depends on how aggressive you are. If you are very aggressive with the child, then obviously the child will retaliate, but you have to know how to do it. You could use different methods. But in the Caribbean, some people like to hit with anything they find. So you could be a bit more discretionate and use more restraint, but at the same time you could stay disciplined. Because in the Bible it does say that if you spare the rod, you essentially spoil the child. So you have to know how to manage it.
I think we're becoming more aware that violence ultimately begets more violence. So our challenge is to find alternative methods of discipline. Coming up next, sex work is becoming a career choice for some people, and safe sex is a priority.
Driving around on the public road fast is a hazard. Drinking and unprotected sex is just another example of careless and irresponsible behavior. I think it's really important for young people to try and actually be engaged in what is smart and what is right for first yourself and then others. That mutual respect needs to be nurtured. So from the circle, love, protect, and respect. Live up.
Live up, shout, live up.
You know, Alex, when we think of sex work, we think of trafficked young men and women who are being forced to work for little or no money. We think of those who have been hooked on drugs to make them more compliant, and of course those who have no other choice. However, there is another side to the story.
That's right. And as we learn in this report from Shamco Pile in Barbados, for some it is a career path that can lead to economic freedom.
Prostitution, correctly referred to as sex work, is a profession that often entertains and intrigues. The very nature of the job exposes practitioners and clients to drugs, violence, and sexually transmitted diseases. Honey, a 43-year-old sex worker who plied her trade at Bush Hill in Bridgetown, Barbados, told us why she voluntarily entered the industry.
I just say, well, I got 5 children, I want to put a roof over my head. Plus, I wouldn't want them neglectful mothers. So I trade with my children, hustle on the road, make sure to get the best, and all they're working today.
Charles Lewis, known as Charlie Spice, is an international sex industry professional and the owner of an exclusive adult entertainment company called the Charlie Spice Lounge. It is located on the prestigious west coast of Barbados. He managed similar clubs in North America and Europe. Charlie Spice believes that most sex workers willingly choose to enter the profession.
A small percentage of the people in the sex industry are victims, yes, but the majority of people are not victims. And recently, because of the recession, I have realized that many more people are now in the industry. People who before would have said to me, I would never get involved in this industry, are now in this industry because they know the money they can make.
Simon Aline, founder of the Lighthouse Foundation, recently conducted research among sex workers in Barbados. His research revealed that many of the sex workers on the Bridgetown streets voluntarily entered the profession.
A lot of people who are involved in sex work are not necessarily uneducated persons. If people don't have opportunities with regards to employment, they may have the desire to actually seek the means to support their families through other ways of getting money. And I think that's why it's attractive to some young women, because it is a way that you can work and you can get your money tax-free.
The chances of sex workers contracting sexually transmitted diseases are increased simply because they have multiple sexual partners. It is for this reason that many sex workers insist on practicing safe sex.
I don't use other people's condoms, I buy my own condoms. And no man can put a condom for me to use. I just gotta put it on myself, because I don't know what he's really up to.
Sex workers tend to be more conscientious about protecting themselves because it is their business. And when, they are consciously having sex with many different partners, so they have an interest in protecting themselves. So I think that it's a myth that we in the sex industry are more likely to have unprotected sex.
It stems from the fact that their body is their merchandise, and they know that if they get an STI, it's not only that's HIV, but if they get an STI, it really can stop them from doing their business properly. The reality of it is that these women have a reputation among their clients, and the referrals are very important to them, because if they treat their clients well, and the clients know that they're clean and they perform their duties well, they can refer more work to them. And that's one of the main reasons why these girls would not have unprotected sex. Also, the fact that they don't want to get pregnant as well, because some of these girls have families, they have boyfriends, they have husbands and so on, and they don't want to bring their work life into their home life.
Despite these reasons, there is still a demand for unprotected sex.
People from mainstream society who are the clients very often offer more money to the sex worker to have unprotected sex. So although the finger is pointed at the sex worker, the action is perpetrated by the persons on the other side who point the finger. So, and you find that when an individual is suffering financially, she is likely to accept.
I've heard men saying, come back with a condom for $200. Some women out there will take the risk. I'm not taking that risk because I love a condom. Because AIDS is out there, and even though you're using a condom, sometimes you don't even be safe. A man might come and deal with so rough, that it burst.
We did our research among 30 sex workers, and we found out that the majority of them, over 80%, they don't indulge in unprotected sex, and they would not do high-risk sex as it relates to anal sex and so on. They would more do the normal vaginal sex, oral sex, with the use of a condom.
No matter the reason why persons choose to enter the sex industry, it is important that practitioners and clients engage in safe sexual relations. From the Barbados Government Information Service, I am Shamko Pillay for Live Up the Show.
I noticed that Simon Aline said that in their survey, 80% of the sex workers practiced safe sex. But that still leaves 20% who are risking disease and pregnancy.
Yeah, I know, right? And it always surprises me to hear when clients are offering to pay extra money for unsafe sex from sex workers. Russian roulette, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that kind of unsafe sex, Russian roulette type of action seems to be popular among our young people, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So we asked you who you thought should be responsible for ensuring that teenagers learn that if they're having sex, it must be protected.
I believe that parents have a responsibility to their children to teach them about sex, rather than leave it to anyone else. They will learn on the playgrounds, they will learn in the schools. But if you are a responsible adult and as a parent, you need to start that teaching about safe sex, about sex at home. They need to have an understanding of their bodies. I think there was a point when we never did because of our age. And I think that there were some poor choices because of that. We live in a different age and time where information is readily available in the palm of your hand. And every child knows things that we as adults do not. And I think the responsibility is ours as adults and parents to teach our children about sex.
I think it should be a joint venture between the parents and the schools and the churches and government in general.
Yes, the parents should take responsibility for these kids. If they're having sex, that they should distribute or encourage them to have safe sex. If they're not getting the information from home, the school should provide something for them to understand what's going on, and the social media plays a very important part.
As I say, education starts at home. So if it starts at home and they go into school and it's also taught in the school, and then when they go back home it's also backed up in the home, well, I guess they would get the idea of what's going on. So it's a home school something.
Teach them was real proper sex education. Show how the male and female is operate. There's why male and female should come together, why they reproduce. A lot of females don't know about pregnancy, how to properly care for the child in the womb and out the womb.
Basically, we all have to play our part. If there are young people who you have in your life and the subject might come up about romantic partners or sex, promote safe sex. You could literally be saving a life.
Right, Jamaicans say gal in a bungle when talking about multiple partners. A report from our archives about just that is coming up next.
Part of living is going out and making good informed decisions. This is the most powerful defense in my mind of our generation. We have a serious problem with AIDS, we have a serious problem with a lot of things that young people are dealing with. But we have to be the one that create the social movement that change it. We have to be the change agent we're looking for. Remember, live up, love, protect, respect.
Live up, shout, live up, shout.
We learned last season that a person is most infectious immediately after being infected with the HIV virus. That's before the antibodies kick in, and that's before any symptoms. That's why it's particularly dangerous to have more than one sexual partner at a time, because that increases the chances of spreading the disease. Gal in a bungle takes a look at the culture of multiple partners in Jamaica.
Yo, I want party. Tell the story. So I go on TV, so I'm gonna deal with the girl so bad, man. I know she jump like a skunk.
Yo, and someone for deal with Cathy, is it? Yo, you saw a man deal with girl, my youth? Mad. And someone for deal with girl all the while. Man, if you have enough woman, you see?
No, Bridget, you can't say that, Bridget. Man, them things ain't right.
Having one woman is like eating chicken every day of the week. You get Clyde plus 2 times on Sunday. No party, you can't work with that. That low. Yeah, man. Enough girl, me say, you know, what you say?
Me, one burner, you know. You know, say me a married man already, youth. So what kind of enough burner to you? Yeah, deal with youth.
Oh, yeah, talk about virgin. What kind of man you be, man? Man, if you have enough girl and girl in a bungle, what the man say? Being say girl from Rima and girl from jungle. So me say cross town, round town and uptown. That me say now.
No, you can even set example.
What kind of example you have?
Set example for the youth, that's not the right example. You
Yeah,
can't
good
go around and
example,
walk
that,
up and down with a bag of woman and expect them things in the right, them things in the safe.
Nah, man, party. You know, some think you're sensible, man.
That's peace.
Yo, my father have a whole heap of woman. That means a whole heap of as you. You see me? Me come up. Me have to show my father appreciation and say, yo, a whole heap of woman and a whole heap of youth me have to give. You see me?
Masculinity in Jamaica, like the definition of masculinity in most cultures of the societies in the global village, is designed and constructed on the idea that the man is the head of household and it's the man's right to run countries and to run things. And so if we look at our scriptures in the Christian theology, if we look at the home and how we socialize boys and girls, if we look at the schools and see what is expected of boys and girls, we can see this tradition of the masculine being preeminent continuing. Of course, the feminine is always seen as subservient, and so women are expected to be passive.
To be a man, it really calls for us to be in keeping with what God's standard is. And as a man, it calls for us to be responsible and to take authority. To, as God presented to Adam way back in Genesis, he really gave man authority to be in charge and, you know, to take control. And so if we are men and we are not doing that, then we are not really effective.
The typical Jamaican man is most identifiable by his libido, I think, or his promotion of his libido. Of course, there are exceptions to every rule, but the greatest belief is that Jamaican men are you know, full of prowess. Basically, that's our most defining masculine trait here.
As a man, you have to worry about the rights and the safety of yourself and your pitney and everybody.
You know, long me have a beer back without not even fly me no catch.
No, you want dead and if you pick them fatherless. You want to pick them fatherless?
No, man. Yo,
so if you have unsafe sex and them thing the youth?
Yo, beer back the thing that's how you expect me to get youth.
No, youth.
How you think my father get youth?
No,
with
youth.
Condom?
You don't say that, youth. You're living dangerously.
So the masculine is defined by the amount of children men can have and the fact that they can produce male children so that their names can be carried on. But deep down in our psyche, the masculine is seen as the aggressor, the one who controls, and the one who's supposed to be the provider, whether or not he has the wherewithal to provide.
So gender is about male and female roles. It's about how we interpret those roles. Who does what? Who is supposed to do what? We have to realize that these also drive HIV. These fuel HIV. Because those roles are taken over into sex, taken over into decision making, and taken over into all other parts of life.
Alive. I want everybody to know that I'm still alive. Love, protect, respect. Live up.
Here in the Caribbean, we have, unfortunately, Alex, equated masculinity with the number of women a man has or the number of children he can father.
Absolutely. That needs to change. I mean, it's no longer even relevant to our society. You know, relationships need time to evolve and children need stable environments within which to flourish. Boys need to learn respect for themselves and women from their fathers, their role models.
And while we're on the subject of role models, here is what popular young artists Kes and Swappy out of TNT have to say on the subject of safe sex.
Hey, this is Swappy in 40.
Yo, this is Kes out of Trinidad and Tobago.
Love, protect,
and respect. You don't know, LIVEUP. You know me as a worthless man and sometimes very sexy on stage. Sex is a very powerful thing. It's good to enjoy life and enjoy sex at the right time.
Remember, protect yourself or else you wreck yourself. Make sure and check yourself. 40. So when it's time to enjoy sex and enjoy life with sex, it will be there and it will be your time, but nothing before it's time. Live up, yeah, be positive. And like us on Facebook too. Join the movement.
Live up, shout, live up, live up.
Now that's an important message. A lot of households headed by women are the result maybe of an early or unplanned pregnancy.
Right.
And financial support, though welcome, is not enough. It's very difficult to raise children in one-parent homes. It's hard to earn money and raise your child unless you have family support.
Yes, which brings us neatly back to where we started. Community, sharing and caring.
In other words, live up. Love, protect, respect.
Hey everyone, welcome to Live Up the show. Alex? Oh, what are we starting?
We were talking last episode.
What did I say?
A number.
The number? Oh, I got that number. Sharing and creating.